Hey guys, this is JerryCricket Gaming. This is one of my favorite YouTube channels, and he's playing Age of Empires 1, but this is the remastered edition that you can play. It's almost like a mod in Age of Empires 2. So this is there's a lot of new features added that you only get in this rendition, this iteration. So this civilization is new. They're called the Viet civilization because Vietnam basically kept the original Age of Empires 1 game alive. There's a very competitive community there. So this civilization was created to thank them, and because, the Vietnamese were big players in the ancient world in East Asia, right? China had a lot of conflicts with the Vietnamese. And then eventually, so more towards Age of Empires 2 range, the Vietnamese were fighting off everyone. They were fighting off the Chinese, the Mongols, the Qing dynasty, etc. But that's not for this video. During this time, they were usually subjugated by various Chinese dynasties. So one of the common criticisms of Age of Empires 1 is that the pathfinding is really bad. And I don't know if they improved on that. But if you notice, the berry bushes have been improved. They look much better than before. Remember, in the original Age of Empires, they called it Juhata or Duhata, remember? So this is a new map, by the way, that you don't have in the definitive edition. So there's way more maps, and Spirit of the Law he has a really interesting technique where as he explores, he builds houses, which I never thought about doing, but that's actually really smart, because what you're doing is you're scattering out your things if you get rushed, right? One of the things, if your buildings are in one area, your economy's in one area, and you get rushed, then they might just take you out. So if you scatter out your buildings, you kind of confuse the enemy, but you also, especially, by the way, I forgot to say, he's playing the AI on extreme. So since you're playing the AI, he doesn't always think like a human player, so he might just start attacking one part of your base instead of saying, like what a human would do, okay, let's try to really wreck his eco, right? So one of the things you do in Age of Empires 1, those straggler trees are very important to build your first houses. Eventually, you'll have enough to build a storage pit. Storage pit is where you store the animal resources that you hunt and store the wood and the gold and what else am I missing? And the stone. Unlike in Age of Empires 2, where you need a stone mining camp and a wood mining camp, and then it's called lumber camp, and then a gold mining camp, you only need one thing in Age of Empires 1. Now, so our man is still exploring and building houses. Very interesting strategy, because in Age of Empires 1, you do not start out with a scout. So because you don't start out with a scout, you have to explore with your villagers, or you could potentially explore with an artifact. If this game has an artifact, Age of Empires 2, you can explore with your sheep too if you really wanted to, but usually you explore with your scout. So food is the most important resource in the early game. And to level up to Tool Age, it goes Stone Age, Tool Age, Bronze Age. There's the artifact. And then Iron Age. To level up to the Tool Age, you have to have a certain number of food. On top of that, in Tool Age, to level up more, you have to be able to have some buildings of that era or that age. So that's something that I think Age of Empires 2 is still the same. So elephants, they run not as fast as the humans. I believe in Age of Empires 2, the elephants are faster than the humans. So that's another difference. Also, in Age of Empires 1, the buildings don't shoot arrows. The town center doesn't shoot arrows. In this edition, this rendition, they actually made it so you can now garrison your villagers in town centers, and you can garrison your villagers in towers. So that's an improvement. Also, I think in the definitive edition, it was already the case, but you can walk through your farms now. You can't walk through your town center yet, even though it looks like you can. Another thing is, in Age of Empires 2, the deer, the dire wolves, the boars, they go back to their original spot unless you keep pressure on them. So it takes much more finesse to lure them what's the word I'm looking for? Herd them. But in Age of Empires 1, they don't return to the original spot. So it's actually easier to go and lure them or bring them closer to wherever you want to bring them. Now, let's think about what other things are included in this new Return of Rome or whatever you call it. I think there's a few more upgrades and there's some balancing out of things. But, I mean, the gameplay is basically more like Age of Empires 1, but with some things added to from Age of Empires 2 that I think made the original feel really good. The deer decay, by the way, so I don't think it was a good idea to leave the deer out like that, but then on the other hand, it's probably better in the long run because you want to just micro once, and maybe that's what he did. So, no need for gold yet. That's why if you notice, on the top left, you can see his population cap, right? He's capped at 36 right now. And then you can also see what age. In addition, look, he's going up to tool age. He's almost there. So right now he's looking at his enemy. Egyptians are very strong in Bronze Age. So if I were Egyptian, I would boom immediately and try to get to Bronze Age. I don't think Egypt is a tool rush civilization. Now, I was never a good Age of Empires 1 player, but I did know Egypt because I played them the most because I loved using their priests. Egyptian priests have way more range than the priests of any other civilization. So I would love to play on island maps where, let's say, the priests would have range across a shallow or whatever, an ocean, and you would be able to just convert their units slowly and just troll them. So my first civilization, I sort of found a groove in. So look at him herding. You see he's herding the deer. Notice the deer doesn't go back, right? It doesn't go back to its original location. So that's a scout. That's what you would start out with in Age of Empires 2. Now, by the way, Shadow, Spirit of the Law, man, increasing my love for this game. One day, guys, I'm going to get back into this game because obviously you can tell this was a very important part of my childhood. I love this game so much. By the way, he just passed an artifact with this other artifact, but I don't think artifacts can capture other artifacts. So he missed that. And just full disclosure, I've watched this before because I wanted to make this a special commentary since this is my first time watching someone play this new mod, this new rendition of the classic game. So, oh, look at that. He's finding his enemy. Now, the enemy is on hardest, or now it's called extreme. So, in the original Age of Empires, it's called hardest. Age of Empires 2, when you play the hardest, they basically get unlimited resources or something. The enemy cheats, but I don't think it's the same in Age of Empires 1. Like, the enemy just moves quicker, but they are quicker as in they go up quicker. But it's not like they get unlimited resources like Age of Empires 2. So, continuing the building of houses. And it's interesting because Spirit of the Law is sort of building kind of like Age of Empires 2, where he's using his buildings to sort of wall, right? That's something that Age of Empires 1 players don't do as often. That really funny-looking building is called the Market. It's a very important building, and that's another change they did when compared to Age of Empires 1, the original, and the definitive edition, is now with Age of Empires this rendition, whatever you call it, the Return of Rome or whatever, so you can actually buy gold. You can buy and sell gold for other resources. So, I mean, after all, it's a market, right? So the market should be able to do that. So that's your towers. You get your tower upgrades in the granary. So he has a little bit of an army. He's going archers right now with scout support, which probably eventually he's going to support with cavalry. We're going to see later, but his opponent actually goes slingers. Slingers are a very good counter for archers, but the issue is slingers are easily taken out by horse-mounted units. Slingers are good against walls and towers. So, briefly, the Vietnamese civilization produces troops a little quicker, and they have certain archer bonuses. So it makes sense that our Spirit of the Law is playing archers. Now, this is the time to farm, and I believe farms can be naturally reseeded now. That's something that, by the definitive edition, Age of Empires 1 already had. So there's a hill bonus / an elevation bonus, so always take advantage of that. the scout in Age of Empires 1 originally, I don't know how it is now, but it didn't attack unless you commanded it to attack or it got attacked. So I don't know if that's still the same. I mean, after all, it's a scout, right? So now the slingers have less range than an archer, obviously, historically accurate. So Spirit of the Law taking advantage of the hill bonus. So he couldn't wall the cliff area. Now, if you look at the computer, it plays in a much more micro way. See, it's much better to micro its units than before. Now, microing your units is something that you can do much better in Age of Empires 2 because you can split your units into different formations, which makes it easier to dodge, especially arrow fire. You can't do that necessarily too well unless I think if you assign different parts of your army different numbers, and then you can use hotkeys to kind of maneuver. But it's much, much harder in Age of Empires 1 to micro correctly. For those of you who don't know what micro means play the little things. So, for example, if you're working your army, making them move a certain way, that's micro. Macro is kind of thinking about the broad game. Okay, how do I level up? What technologies do I get? What ages do I start attacking, etc., etc.? So it's a mixture of micro and macro, right? In fact, micro, you can call it real-time tactics. Real-time strategy is what Age of Empires is considered. So at the end of the day, no matter how good you are at microing, if you don't focus on the macro, then you're going to lose. Macro always beats micro. But two players that macro equally well, if one of them micros better, then he or she will always win, or most of the time win. So that's kind of how I would describe micro versus macro type of thing. So see, the scout is that's cavalry. Sorry, he's in the Bronze Age, right? I was so busy kind of explaining the game that I didn't realize he leveled up. So Bronze Age is when, if you're a late star civilization, you can really, really level up and really start attacking, right? Bronze Age is when your bow, aka your archery range, starts being able to really pump out good troops. You also get cavalry, right? So your stable, as it's called, gets a lot of good stuff. What Spirit of the Law is showing here is that in Age of Empires 1, once you get to Bronze Age, you might as well just keep building town centers because it's not too much more wood to build a town center. So you might as well just build town centers because they can collect things like storage pits and they can produce population. So it's a win-win, and it's only 50% more gold, not 50%. So by Bronze Age, you're going to need gold, right? You will need wood too, especially if you want to do siege and you want to build towers. Did I say wood? I'm sorry, I meant stone. But you definitely, to build an army, you have to have gold. And also certain civilizations are very gold dependent, which actually makes the Egyptians sort of at a disadvantage because the Egyptians are gold dependent. They don't have what you can call trash units or spam units, right? Spam units are units that basically only take wood and food because wood and food are the most abundant resources. Gold would always run out in Age of Empires 1, but now they introduced the market, and certain civilizations have trade cards too, especially if you're playing team games. So they've eased out on the gold thing. Originally, if you ran out of gold on the map, the only way to get gold is if you were playing on some kind of water map. You can use your trade ships to get gold. That was the only way. But now you have the market, and in team games, you got trade cards. So those are something. So he is using his granary and his town center as places to farm. Right now, throwing it back to the terms we learned, he's macroing super well. Very rarely do you see idle villagers. In Age of Empires 1, in later patches in the original, they started introducing a hotkey, I think it was period, to find idle soldiers or idle units, but now you can customize your hotkeys. So I don't know what hotkey he has, but that's kind of what he has. So If you look at the bottom middle, that's his hotkeys. You can see that. Sorry, that's not his hotkeys. That's his number assignments. So he's assigned 1, 2, and 3 on his keyboard for different things. One of his assignments is just a villager he feels for, that he is honoring a patron. So that's extreme good fan service by Spirit of the Law. So usually games can end in Bronze Age. Basically, in Iron Age, you're sort of playing endgame. You're finishing up your enemy. So by Tool Age, usually games are decided, but if both people are sort of more late starters, they want to boom, then the battle starts in Bronze Age. Very rarely does it go to Iron Age. That's how I played as a kid because I didn't understand sort of the strategy. So I would always try to level up to Iron Age. So when I was playing humans, you would get rushed. If you're playing computers, usually they would beat you to Iron Age. And what happened a lot back in Age of Empires 1, when you played the computers, they would build those pesky wonders because they would be so much quicker than you. And so you'd end up trying to fight them, and very rarely do you get to a point where you can take them on. So I got defeated by the computer when they built their wonders. You would end up using the Photon Man. So there we go. That's the Egyptian priests. The priests converted one of Spirit of the Law's. See that? Converted the cavalry, but his army's so strong that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Also, if you notice, another thing they added is you can actually get multiple upgrades. They just line up. It's not like you have to get an upgrade and then wait. So that's another thing they took from Age of Empires 2, right? In Age of Empires 1, originally, you need to build, let's say, 5 storage pits if you want to get 5 upgrades at the same time. But I think in Rise of Rome, they might have even changed it. I don't remember. So he's already pressing forward. He has a siege workshop. The enemy, the Egyptian enemy, also has a siege workshop. So at this phase, honestly, it's probably GG soon. I can already see it. When I was originally watching this, I already was predicting it. There's no way the enemy can come back from this unless the enemy cheats, right? He's really ahead. And the enemy, I think, actually would have done well to Priest Rush. And the reason Priest Rush would have been good is because this Viet civilization has chariots, but our Spirit of the Law has not created any chariots. And the reason chariots are important against priests is because they have natural counter to priests. As in, priests can't convert chariots as easily. With this type of army, if let's say the enemy had 8 priests, the enemy could just wreak devastation on Spirit of the Law. But again, the enemy, I think, invested too much money earlier, too much resources on slingers, and I think that drove his economy a little bit backwards, right? He's not in Iron Age yet, whereas look at that, Iron Age now for Spirit of the Law. So if you look at the points there, Spirit of the Law is twice. See that? He's got 2 times more points than. That's why it's another reason why I'm like, yeah, it's going to GG soon. So here we go. Look at this. He's still trying to use slingers. That's the thing. A human would immediately know that he can't be investing in slingers anymore. He got to have priests, and then he got to have cavalry, right? The Egyptians don't have cavalry, but they got good chariots. They got some certain bonuses on their chariots. So you got to counter their archers with chariots because slingers are just too underpowered now. Slingers are only good for Iron Age. By Bronze Age, they're already going to get destroyed. Right? It's not like Age of Empires 2 where the skirmishers can get upgraded. So when the enemy's at those stone throwers / composite bowmen, you need to counter him with other units. Preferably units that are fast, like chariots, because Egyptians don't have the cavalry and they don't have the cavalry archers. And then you need priests because your priests are overpowered, man. Egyptian priests are scary, beyond scary. So, yeah, see, look at that. Look at how far those priests go. You see how far those priests are? So, see, he converted them. So, look at that. That's the thing about Age of Empires 1. You can send a few troops and do devastation onto the economy because even though you can now garrison your units inside the town center, you cannot, unfortunately, shoot arrows from the town center. And I wonder if that's something they're going to add. But then that would feel too much like Age of Empires 2. But like from a logic flow, that's something that Age of Empires 1 needs, right? I don't know. We'll see. So it's a little bit of a siege battle right now, but right now it's too overpowered, as in Spirit of the Law, who we're rooting for, is just way ahead. Look at that. He's 3 times ahead now. Basically, there's no way, very, very, very small likelihood that our extreme hardest enemies ever going to come back. So, very important, right? Lessons include you got to boom, and you got to very quickly determine what the enemy is trying to do, and you got to switch accordingly. Like, for example, if our Spirit of the Law got the wrong units, like if he invested in barrack units, which he shouldn't have because, the Vietnamese civilization's archer heavy, but let's say he invested in barrack units and he saw that the enemy was investing in some kind of units that would counter him, he has to switch his military production, right? But that's another reason why you should read up on the civilization before you play, and read up on who you're playing too, so you know, okay, what are they good at? Like, this opponent, if it weren't an AI, he or she should have known, okay, I'm going up against Vietnamese, this is likely what they'll produce, how do I counter them, right? That's why team games are so fun, because team games make it so, let's say you got one civilization that beats another civilization, hopefully your teammate can counter that. That was a case right there where he had some idle villagers, but at this point it doesn't matter anymore. So look at that, the computer resigned. And this was my first game ever watching this kind of newest of new iteration of Age of Empires 1, but now adopted and adapted for Age of Empires 2 servers and game modes and players. There's a lion. That's what Spirit of Law was talking about. And this is beyond awesome. And I will do a lot more of these commentaries. And one day, I promise you guys, I will play this. This was my childhood, man. I loved playing this game. And now that I'm older, I can kind of not just play the same way, but learn from all these experts online. Hopefully one day I'll get to play Spirit of the Law online. Everyone watching, including Spirit of the Law, thank you. And I hope you guys liked my commentary. This was JerryCricket Gaming, and we will do a lot more. Talk to you guys soon. Good job, Spirit of the Law.